Hello everyone, and welcome to the Gen Z video games Iceberg. I had the idea of making this video after watching a video on Gen Z early internet trauma. I quickly searched up that there were icebergs on video games, but none about Gen Z, and considering that I'm right in the middle of this generation, and that we're the first generation that was born with the internet and video games, it would make for a great 3-part series. If you don't know what an iceberg chart is by now, the most known topics are going to be higher on the iceberg, and the deeper we descend, the more niche and interesting things we'll get. For this video, the first 2 layers aren't really different from one another, just a heads up I felt like stating. Now before we start, I want to make some basic rules I'll be using through the whole series. If you don't really care about these, you can skip to the timestamp written on the screen, or skip through the chapters on the video. Rule number 1, I will not be mentioning any games that no footage exists of. I will try my best to take the footage of every game myself, but if it's not possible, I will credit on the top left of the screen who I took the footage from. Rule number 2. I will try my best to take games/franchises that were released in the late 2000s and early 2010s. There are some exceptions to this, but I will explain with set entry on why I placed it there. Rule number 3. On the bottom of your screen you will see different pins, each of them according to how much I knew about the topic before writing its script. I'll show them on the screen right now in order of my knowledge on said games. Rule number 4. I will try to make every layer have at least 10 games. As of now, I'm pushing for 20 entries per layer, but this might get very difficult for deeper layers. With that said, grab a snack and a drink, put this on your second monitor or in the background because it's going to be a long journey. And welcome everyone to the Gen Z video games Iceberg Explained. Super Mario is a platformer game series created by Shigeru Miyamoto and published by Nintendo. There has consistently been at least one Mario game on every major Nintendo console. The games are divided in a 2D or 3D environment, where players control Mario or a character of their choosing in the newer titles. The 2D games are a side-scroller, where the goal of the player is to traverse through 8 different worlds to rescue Princess Peach while collecting secret coins to unlock post-game content, whereas the 3D games boast a semi-open world, where the player will either gather power stars, moons, or sunshines to unlock different areas in the games. The last installment in the series is Super Mario Bros. Wonder for the 2D games and Super Mario Odyssey for the 3D games, coming out in 2023 and 2017 respectively. Additionally, Nintendo partnered with Illumination and Universal Studios to make the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Although the movie received mixed reviews from critics, who was surprised, at least the fans gave the movie the love it deserved. The movie grossed $1.36 billion worldwide, breaking a multitude of box office records. Additionally, the Super Mario Galaxy movie came out April 1st, 2026, and got around the same scores for critics and fan audiences alike. Browser games, or Flash games, were a stepping stone for when I was lazy and didn't want to do my work in class. Anyways, these games were primarily made in Adobe Flash, a software that used ActionScript as a programming language that made it easy for game making. Think of it like Roblox Studios before that existed. Alright, time to give you all the nostalgia flash, no pun intended. Here it goes. Papa Louie Games, World's Hardest Game, Little Alchemy, Club Penguin, Earn to Die, Fireboy and Water Girl, Jack Smith, and finally the GOAT of all Flash games, Cactus McCoy. Unfortunately, Flash shut down December 31st, 2020. Some people have made a collaborative effort to archive most of the stuff made on Flash, the most popular group being Flashpoint Archive. Since the start of their archive journey, they successfully archived 200,000 games and videos, but unfortunately, like all mediums of this time, some games are still lost to this day. Now I have missed some Flash games, but don't worry, there is a reason for it. They're notorious after all. Stay tuned. .io games are a genre of Flash games. Now the only reason why I didn't include these in the last entry is because they were primarily multiplayer based games. Their popularity spiked when the Gar.io and Slither.io came out. After that, the other games followed and became immensely popular one after another. Zoms.io, Survive.io, Shellshock.io, Hole.io, Paper.io, you get it. Now for the most popular games of this genre, you can still play them to this day, as their server hasn't shut down yet. The only difference is that you'll most likely be playing against bots. Minecraft is a sandbox game developed and published by Mojang in 2011. Players explore randomly generated worlds, or can use the seed mechanic to explore already known worlds. Since it's a sandbox, there is no right way to play, so I won't get into detail on how you should play because you can basically do anything. Being the best-selling game of all time, 350 million copies to be precise, it was all part of our childhood, and keeps thriving and resurging every few years because of the community. For the good, the bad, and unfortunately, the sad. In 2025, the Minecraft movie came out, making around $961.2 million. I remember going with my friends to see this movie and screaming all the memes from the trailers, and cheering when the damn chicken jockey came on screen. It was honestly one of the best movie moments of my life. Donkey Kong Country, especially Country Returns and Tropical Freeze, were games I'd always come back to when I was a kid. These games came out in 2010 and 2014 respectively. I think the reason these games work so well is because it was like the 2D Mario games, but with a fresh coat of paint, making them fun to just pick up and play for a few hours. Although the difficulty in certain bonus stages and later worlds shaped me up to a never-endless search for hard games, I still haven't one to truly test me since. Well, maybe one actually, but we'll get to it later on. Sonic the Hedgehog is a platforming game released by Sega. The game follows a basic story of having to collect Chaos Emeralds to defeat Dr. Eggman. The main survival mechanic is to collect rings to be able to tank damage. If you get hit, you'll have to recollect a certain amount of rings back. The percentage varies from sequels. The game is way more fast-paced than Mario and the level design kind of throws you off. It's sort of made that if you go too fast you will get hit and lose your rings, so you have to be careful about that. There are also 3D titles in the franchise that make the games a fantastic open world. I won't talk much about it since I haven't dabbled into Sonic too much, but I highly suggest checking them out anyways. Another game that needs no explanation, but I will for the sake of the Iceberg. Fortnite Save the World is a game that was released in 2017 in early access alongside its Battle Royale game mode by Epic Games. And my god did they make it. After its release, the popularity skyrocketed. It was basic at school. If you weren't playing Fortnite, you weren't gonna have people to talk to. I remember bragging to my friends after I got my first win back in early Season 3, even though I camped and I only got 1 kill. Anyways, I got sidetracked. The game is separated into 2 different game modes. At least it was back then. Save the World, which was the paid version where you would fight off zombies and complete diverse tasks in a set amount of time to progress. You could also build your own base and host players in it, to either fight off the zombie hordes or, well, scam. And then you have Battle Royale, where 100 people fight to the death, solo or in teams of 2 and 4. You would drop in different POIs across the map where you would gather loot and try to survive as long as you could. I think what was most addictive about this game is that it was easy to just play one more match. Since the time of the matches were never set, it had infinite replayability. Since its release, Fortnite has been on a constant downfall and will most likely never peak back in popularity. Grand Theft Auto, or GTA for short, is a series made by Rockstar Games. In these games, you follow a different protagonist in different open world maps, and basically live like a gangster. Kill people, sell drugs, rob banks, GTA has it all. Since the release of GTA 5, which is an amazing game till this day, although people still play GTA 5 online, it is time for a fresh game where I am convinced we will see an economic crash for some companies. Everyone will be playing this game. At the time of writing this video, GTA 6 is supposedly releasing 19th of November 2026. We'll see if that stands. Plants vs Zombies is a video game where you fight off zombies with plants. And that's it. 10.8 million sales. Okay, for real this time. PvZ is a tower defense game where you fight off zombies in a 5-lane lawn. Different worlds mean different gimmicks, different games also, so I won't get into detail with all of them. You fight off zombies with different kinds of plants, although there are just enough plants to make every loadout and level infinitely replayable. Since the release of the original game back in 2009 by PopCap, there has been a sequel that was released in 2013, and a third game that will not get out of beta to save its life. Maybe we will see it come to light in a finished state soon. Wii Sports was released by Nintendo alongside the Wii for free in 2006. The game was made to show off the Wii Remote's motion controls. You play a series of mini games where you imitate playing a real sport. It was great for kids like me who didn't go outside and just played indoors. The mini games followed like so. Tennis, where you would either play solo or duo. Baseball, where you would play 3 innings top and bottom. Golf, where you would choose one of 3 difficulties and played 3 holes each. And finally boxing, where you would try and KO the opponent as fast as possible in the span of 3 rounds. You could also play mini challenges with mini games to try and score a medal. The levels go as so: bronze, silver, gold, and finally platinum. The Legend of Zelda is an action-adventure semi and sometimes fully open world game developed by Nintendo. The player plays as Link and your goal is to traverse through Hyrule to eventually defeat Ganondorf.
The games offer a multitude of ways to play them, though sometimes you are confined to having to beat some dungeons to progress. The latest installment, Tears of the Kingdom, follows Link through Hyrule with the same style as in Breath of the Wild, though adding floating islands and buildable cars, planes, and mechanics. The games are also great for racking up playtime, so they're definitely a must-have, especially Breath of the Wild. That game is a beauty. Cookie Clicker is an incremental game where you click a cookie, and click again and again and again, and suddenly you become so addicted that you've gotten more cookies than you can ever fathom if you tried. I'm serious, it's so addictive. On another aspect, it was released in 2013, received updates here and there until around 2023. It even got a Steam port in 2021 for around $5. This incremental game for me is another one of those browser games where people just play it all the time. This incremental game for me is another one of those browser games people used to play all the time, where you don't really have to recognize the game to understand why it would be so popular. Another huge stepping stone for browser games. Not really much to say about this game, I just felt it deserved its own spot since from my knowledge, it kinda started the whole incremental games genre. Angry Birds is a franchise developed by Rovio in 2009. The whole premise of the first games was that you had a bunch of birds with different gimmicks. Some went faster when you tapped on the screen, some would split into smaller birds, some did nothing, you get the idea. You had to kill these pigs to get back your eggs, and the better you did, the better your score would be. It came out on iOS and was around $1 at a time. After their main headline of games, they made spin-offs where the characters would be played in all sorts of genres of games. Racing, RPG, bubble popping, anything popular, Angry Birds were selling it for $1. After that, they made 2 movies, which are acceptable. We haven't seen much activity from Rovio for a long time. They've been mostly taking their games from the App Store then putting new ones, which is sad to see. You can still play their games if you download their APKs online though. CSGO, or Counter-Strike Global Offensive, is a game made and published by Valve. It was released in 2012 for PC and is still one of the most played games to this day. This game had it all, honestly. A fun replayable style of 5v5 tactical shooter where every life would count for your team. First to 13 rounds won wins. A community that shits on you for everything you do, and gambling. Who doesn't love gambling? Another big part of why I added this game on the list is for the surfing minigame that people would play and put on gameplay commentary videos. This and Cluster-Struck were the peak of that era. And honestly, I prefer this over Cluster-Struck. In my opinion, it just had a better aesthetic and calmer vibe to it. Would carry my Friday nights watching creepypastas till 4 AM. Okay, I'll try to be brief with this one because I could make a 3-hour long video about the history with it. Roblox is a game creating engine used to create games and share with others. It's not primarily a gaming platform, even though 99% of people play games on it. While Roblox came out in 2006, it has always been primarily used to teach people, mostly kids, how to make their own video games. It has even become a pioneer in it. When I first tried to make a game on Roblox, it wasn't to the point where the Roblox Studio forum existed, so I gave up pretty shortly after trying. So I do fit in the 99th percentile of people that use this app. I remember being addicted to this platform when I was young. My favorite games at the time were Flee the Facility, Murder Mystery 2, Jailbreak, Phantom Forces, Roblox Death Run, basically any simulator I could get my hands on. LEGO games are games made by Traveler Tales, where they would adapt movie mediums into short games that were made in the LEGO style. Batman, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter's. These games were amazing and I could spend countless hours trying to 100% any of them, though I still haven't had the mental patience to do so. They always go on sale on Steam for like $5 during the big sales. Go check them out if you haven't had the chance to play them before. Now these are all the Mario games where the gameplay loop isn't monotonous. I'm talking about the games like Paper Mario, Mario and Luigi, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, Mario Kart, even though that one kinda could be monotonous, but if you count the online game mode then not really. Super Smash Bros. Hell, even Mario vs. Sonic at the Olympic Games could count in here. I wanted to separate these two because I didn't want the first segment of the Iceberg to take up like a bajillion years, and also because I felt like it's easier to digest Mario content like this, since it does tend to get repetitive from one Iceberg video to another. All these games were very different from one another, so I won't go into detail about them, but they're all fun nonetheless. And finally, for the last entry of this layer, we have friend slot games. What do I mean by that? Games that you play for a week or two and never touch again. So games like Among Us, Lethal Company, Content Warning, Repo, Peak, Pit of Goblin, and most recently, Gamble with Your Friends. Although that game is Peak because it's gambling. All these games except Among Us follow a simple path. 2 to 4 players, you try to scavenge as much loot as possible, or all of it if you're brave enough, and fill up a quota. These games are infinite though, and there's basically no real incentive to keep playing after you get used to everything. If only they would add Steam achievements or some sort of progression system where you could grind for upgrades, cosmetics, unlock new maps where new monsters would be, stuff to keep the game fresh. Although, I have to add something. Gamble with Your Friends does do this. Now, the game has multiple endings, even though it's just double or nothing, or you get away with your money. And they have Steam achievements, which was a blast to play through. At least Peak did something interesting where you did have an end goal and a different map every day, but the gameplay loop still stays the same. And since the games do last long, you can only go for one round, from my experience at least. It also feels like these games get less and less attention from people the more they come. Most likely since streamers aren't playing as much, or people are catching on to the money scheme. Maybe it's just a coincidence also, who knows. So this entry refers to the phenomenon that was mascot horror games. It originated from a little indie game called Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm sure none of you know what that is though. Released in 2014 by Scott Cawthon. During the game you would try to survive from 12 AM to 6 AM in an office whilst fighting animatronics for 5 nights. After FNAF, the game that followed it was Bendy and the Ink Machine, a horror exploration game released in 2017 by Joey Drew Studios. This game was more story focused, where you would roam around an abandoned studio. It was chapter based and each chapter will release shortly after the last one. And then, the real slot begins. Poppy Playtime and Garden of Banban were released around the same time. And I just do not want to get into them because frankly the games are just bad. And also because we're not really in Gen Z at this point. Kirby is a platformer game series where you play as Kirby, a pink blob that basically acts as a black hole. It's a really interesting gimmick and makes for really fun gameplay. The games I'm mostly referring to for this Iceberg are as follows. Superstar Ultra, which came out in 2008 for the Nintendo DS, Return to Dreamland, which came out in 2011 for the Wii, and Triple Deluxe, which came out in 2014 for the Nintendo 3DS. I haven't actually played any of these games before, although I do have fond memories of watching Zach Scott games and other YouTubers play them. I don't know, I never really was interested in actually playing the games. Just love watching gameplay. Racing games are games where you race people in cars. Even if the gameplay is simple, I still spend countless hours playing these games. Asphalt, Need for Speed, Forza Horizon, and Motorsports. There's not much to say about these games other than what I mentioned. If you played them, then you would know the blast of beating your own record on certain tracks, or just driving around the open world and taking in the view. Rocket League is a game where you play car soccer. Simple but addictive. Released in 2015, it quickly gained a cult-like following. Growing up and watching RLCS with my friends, which is the esports of Rocket League, was always a blast. Grinding training packs just to rank up one division was a pain though. The game has been in a steady decline throughout the years though. Since 2020, the game has been bought off from Psyonix and given to Epic Games, consequently making the game free to play. This was a controversial change since Epic Games ruined the game to most people's eyes. They removed loot crates and replaced them for blueprints. Loot crates were kind of like you would buy a key, get a crate. It was kind of like CSGO, and you would get a random skin or a random gold explosion. And they replaced them with blueprints, making the price way higher than it needed to be for items. They removed trading, which was also a big aspect for the game, and recently they removed Bacchus mod, which is a mod menu used for cosmetic changes and overall quality of life updates. Though they did remove hackers and bots in high-ranked elo with the easy anti-cheat implications. Also, just recently it was announced that Unreal Engine 6 was coming out with Rocket League, and Rocket League was built off Unreal Engine 4, which was a game engine used to make PS3 games. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy. I'm really looking forward to see what they're gonna do and what they're gonna change. Released in 2013 by Railtalk Games, Geometry Dash is a side-scroller game. The game originally, through updates, only had 22 official levels. the way the game survived is by community-made maps. Throughout multiple editor tool updates, the game has seen a major step up from its original rated levels. A rated level is the way that RobTop, the creator of the game, can thank someone for making a level for the game, by making it grant stars to the user, which is the game's main focus of grind. Throughout the years, the game has divided players into 3 categories. Category 1, level makers. People that give a majority of their time at creating levels for the community, making bigger and better projects with each level they create. Category 2, star grinders. People that focus on getting as many stars as they can. Each level gives from 1 to 10 stars depending on the level's difficulty. Category 3, extreme demon grinders. People that focus their time at trying to beat the hardest levels in the game. There's a whole website dedicated to this called the AREDL, or All Rated Extreme Demon List. They give points depending on how easy the extreme demon you beat is. But then again, only a small percentile of people that play the game actually beat extreme demons. The Escapist is a semi-stealth prison escape game, where you take the role of an inmate in a different prison with varying difficulty. After its release in 2015, the game received multiple DLCs for new prisons, also varying in difficulty. What's fun about this game is that every prison has multiple ways to escape. Some take more times than others. There are also quests that you can fulfill for inmates, granting money and reputation with that inmate to buy contraband items. There are also quests that you can fulfill for inmates, granting money and reputation with that inmate to buy There are also quests that you can fulfill for inmates, granting money and reputation for that. There are also quests that you can fulfill for inmates, granting money and reputation with that inmate to buy contraband items from there. There are also quests that you can fulfill for inmates, granting money and reputation with that inmate to buy contraband items from them to. There are also quests that you can fulfill for inmates, granting money and reputation with that inmate to buy contraband items from them to help with your escape. You can also train your knowledge and physical power to craft better items for your escape and take down guards/inmates with much more ease, respectively. In 2017, the game had a sequel that received equally as good reviews, though I personally prefer the original much more. Pikmin is a real-time strategy puzzle video game created by Shigeru Miyamoto. Published by Nintendo, the series has 4 main titles, last main title being released on the Nintendo Switch in 2023. The game's story varies from game to game. The gameplay consists of you searching and scavenging different Earth-like planets. On these planets, you'll encounter various plant-like friendlies called Pikmins, varying on size and speed. The species all have different abilities. Using said Pikmin, you can defeat various bosses and enemies, collecting their corpses for money or completion percentage. Terraria is a 2D sandbox action-adventure game developed by Relogic. The problem that Terraria faced, though, was a lack of a real tutorial, forcing new players to be convinced by a friend or learn the game on their own via guides on YouTube or using the wiki. Even with this said, I'm sure the die-hard Terraria fans would even agree that fully learning the intricacies of this game is almost impossible. Since its release, Terraria has been getting constant updates, through the modding community or in the vanilla game. Who would have known that having a modding community would make your game so much more impactful? With the help of Tmod Loader, available for free on Steam, a bunch of mods have been created for the game. One of, if not the most popular mod for Terraria is the Calamity mod, adding many hours of playtime in the endgame and a bunch of new enemies and bosses. What's fun about this mod is that it's entirely available through the vanilla game, so it doesn't hijack the experience for players looking for a fresh start with new content. Oh boy, do I have a lot to say about this one. Splatoon is a third-person shooter created by Hisashi Nogami and published by Nintendo. Set in a far-future post-apocalyptic Earth repopulated with kid squig-like creatures, the game is divided into 2 ways of playing. The first is via the single-player campaign, where you play as Agent 3 in the search to retrieve the great zapfish that disappeared from Inkopolis, the hub world of the game. After defeating the final boss, DJ Octavio, you retrieve said zapfish and most likely move on to the second way of playing, which is the multiplayer. Set across different game modes and maps, the multiplayer is played with 8 players divided into 2 teams with different game modes such as Turf War, Rainmaker, Tower Control, Splat Zones, and finally Clan Blitz. One aspect I love about these games more than the amazing soundtrack that I still find myself listening to frequently to this day were the Splatfest. A limited time event where players would choose between 2 teams when they logged on into the game after the event launched. Usually the teams were split by topics such as hot dogs versus burgers or ketchup versus mustard. Basic stuff that worked flawlessly. The teams work together in games of turf wars. The points would then be accumulated in form of clout, and the winning team would get a bonus limited time cosmetic. Since the release of the first game on the Wii U, 2 others have been released for the Nintendo Switch in 2017 and 2022 respectively. Both games expand the single-player story and lore as well as expanding the multiplayer and roster of cosmetics and weapons to use. Since then, a new game called Splatoon Raiders has been announced, which looks to be a single-player only game. Its launch date is set for July 23rd, 2026. Like I said before, I could most likely write a 50-page script all about Splatoon. Sadly, I have to limit myself to the Iceberg format. The Binding of Isaac is a roguelike action-adventure game designed by Edmund McMillan and Florian Himsel. Originally released in 2011, the game follows a biblical story of the same name, being that Isaac is an alone child and his mother basically is trying to kill him, resulting in him hiding in the basement of his house. Being a roguelike, the game has endless possibilities, making the players have to think before grabbing certain items to not take some that will ruin the current build that they're going for. The camera is set on a bird's eye view, which is the same in Zelda Dungeons. I find this fantastic since how the game can become very hectic at times, and having a bird's eye view on everything facilitates the gameplay. After the original release, the game got a remake in 2014, revamping the graphics and overall quality of the game. Since the 2014's release, the game has gotten multiple DLCs, adding hundreds of items and hours of content. To this day, The Binding of Isaac is considered one of the hardest games to 100%, taking around 500 to even 1,000 hours in extreme cases. The game has gotten notorious with people who dare to attempt this piece of a platinum. Another favorite of mine. Cuphead is a run-and-gun boss rush game released by AMDHR Studios in 2017. Yes, Cuphead is going to be 10 years old next year. The story of Cuphead is simple. Cuphead and Mud might go to a casino and make a deal with the devil. They essentially bet their souls on a pair of dice. Getting snake eyes, the two beg for mercy. The devil then tells them if they collect the souls of everyone in the 3 inkwell isles, they'll live on without servitude to the devil for eternity. After this, you're dropped onto the beautiful world of Cuphead, having to defeat bosses and traverse through levels, all increasing in difficulty as the player advances through the game. If this game wasn't already notorious for its harsh difficulty, it became so for its art style. The game's animations are fully drawn by hand. Everything you see is grueling hours of hard work, and I can't do anything but appreciate that. The delicious last course, funny enough being an acronym for DLC, came out in 2022 after numerous delays. It added a fully new character and a bunch of new bosses, as well as a gauntlet style where you could parry to defeat all the chess pieces. During the Summer Game Fest this year, we got a new Cuphead teaser, which I am also ecstatic about. I originally called this entry Faudian games, but I changed it when I started writing the script. Rage games refers to the multitude of games that were made to pretty much just piss off people. Let me name a couple of you if you haven't catched on yet. I Am Bread, Getting Over It, Pogo Stuck, Co-op, a difficult game about climbing, Only Up, Chained Together. These games were mostly inspired by Ben Foddy with his game, Getting Over It, hence the entry originally named Faudian games. These games usually do a technique called asset flipping, where you take free assets from the Unity game page and use them to create an amalgamation of a course. The main takeaway being that there are no real checkpoints, making it so that if you fall, you could lose from seconds to hours of progress, depending on your skill level. Hollow Knight is a masterpiece. That's it. If you haven't played it yet and know nothing about the game, I highly suggest you click off this video, go buy it now, and thank me later. If there is one game I will want to replay from scratch knowing nothing, it's this one. Now that the warnings have been set, let's start the entry. Hollow Knight is an indie Metroidvania Souls-like style game released in 2017 by Team Cherry. The game takes place in the now rotten kingdom of Hollow Nest. Even though the early game's color palette is very stale, don't let it fool you. This game is a masterpiece that I've poured nearly 300 hours in it, and that I've 100% twice. One on the Switch and one on PC. The game flows perfectly for new and experienced players alike. If you love games where you can just sit down, relax and dive in, you'll love this title. Think of it like Breath of the Wild, though 2D and available in 120 FPS and higher. The game contains 4 free DLCs, adding a bunch of new content such as Hidden Dreams, a dream edition where you can enter certain bosses in a dreamlike state, buffing them to be way more difficult than they already were. The Grim Troop, adding a new charm and making some breakable charms permanent, as well as adding one of the best bosses in the game, Nightmare King Grim. Lifeblood, adding blue hearts which are non-permanent HP, scattered around the map and included in 3 new charms. And finally, Gods in Glory, my personal favorite. A boss rush game mode making you fight back-to-back certain bosses in the game, and eventually all of the bosses in the game, 52 to be precise. Hollow Knight Silksong was a long-awaited sequel that released this year. The game improved in certain aspects, but for me, it just couldn't beat the first one. I don't know if it's because I was expecting greater things or just because I grew older. There's a free DLC coming out this year which I am waiting before 100%ing the original game. I don't want to explain anything about the story because people who love this game know it's incredible, and for you who ignore my previous warning, yeah, I know you. Want to know just a bit more? I hope I sold the game to you. For this intro, I'll only be talking about the games released by From Software, so no Sekiro and stuff like Mortal Shell. Souls games, or Soul-like games, usually take place in a dark fantasy world. I'm assuming that players play a different character each game in an RPG style format. These games are known for their harsh and at times even a fair difficulty. Since the release of the first game in the franchise, Demon's Souls, back in 2009, the franchise has gone numerous sequels, Elden Ring being the last one to come out back in 2022. I don't count Night Rain though, that game came out last year but it's more focused on multiplayer and it's not really a traditional Souls-like in my eyes. But who am I to judge? I've only played Elden Ring. I won't try to explain the stories of these games because it's very cryptic and left to interpretation at times. I put around 100 hours into Elden Ring and I've gotten no understanding of its story, even when I tried understanding. What makes these games special is the lack of tutorials. You're just left into this huge world and you basically do whatever you want. I'll mention Breath of the Wild again because it's basically the only game that comes to mind, but even then, these games don't give you an indicator to go on like Zelda. Luigi's Mansion is an action-adventure game published by Nintendo. You follow Luigi into haunted houses and buildings, giving a darker side to Nintendo. I say darker very lightly, but it is what introduced me into horror nonetheless. Then again, I think FNAF, and that's probably the one that introduced me to horror. After the success of the first game on the GameCube back in 2001, there has been multiple sequels. The one I remember fondly is Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. I remember watching Zack Scott playing this before going to school. In these games you follow Luigi in the search of trying to find his missing brother Mario in a bunch of haunted and spooky areas. I feel like they really nailed the atmosphere in these games, especially the latest release in the franchise, Luigi's Mansion 3. Just something about the lightning in the background. The main gimmick of this game is that you use the Poltergust 3000, a modified vacuum cleaner that you use to capture ghosts. Given to you by Professor Egad, the sort of sidekick that basically backseats game your whole playthrough telling you where to go and what to do. The final bosses of these games were always King Boo, which is nice to see him have some love in the franchise. What I find funny though is the ghosts used in the game aren't actual boos, so he's just kind of out of place, but I won't complain. Like I said before, this is the game that brought me and probably thousands of kids to the horror genre. Okay, the reason I put these in the different categories because they're console games and spin-offs on the original mobile game. That's why it's niche in my opinion. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 1 and 2 and Battle for Neighborville are the third-person shooter games released by EA. Garden Warfare was released in 2014 and was a smash hit with fans of the franchise. It was basically Call of Duty but for kids. The games were separated into different game modes, all basically ripping off COD's game modes, but who cares. The players were divided into 2 teams, Plants and Zombies. There's also the boss game modes in Garden Warfare 1 on both teams, but no one really played that. Garden Warfare 2 coming out in 2016 is basically Garden Warfare 1 but better, expanding on characters and even adding a somewhat fun storyline. Funny enough, it's the game I believe I have the most time in. I'd have to count hours on all the platforms I played on, but it would be very close to the 755 hours I have on Geometry Dash. The game added new maps, upgraded graphics, and new character variants. Battle for Neighborville, released in 2019, did the exact opposite that made the previous games famous, in that they focused the majority of their time on the single-player campaign and not the multiplayer aspect. Also, they pulled the plug on the game way too early in my opinion. Not even 1 year after the release of the game, they announced that they would stop development for the game. Since then, no news for a new game in the franchise has been announced, though I still have a glimmer of hope for Garden Warfare 3. Pokemon is an RPG-style game where you try and collect various Pokemons in different areas. What was fun about this series of games is the gotta catch 'em all aspect of the game, where the game entices you to try and catch all the Pokemons the game had to offer. The games were all similar to each other, the only thing different coming from the fact that the games had become a more open world style. The games would always follow a simple format of getting to a new town, fighting the gym leader, and getting the badge of that area, making the Pokemon's levels higher than the previous gym. Each Pokemon has a different type to them, making the gameplay formula pretty complicated if you want to maximize kill times. The series has gotten some pretty big clashes with the new releases. From what I heard, the games can barely run on the new Switch hardware, and when they do, the games are rarely optimized. What's fun about the Pokemon franchise is that there are also trading cards and a fully fledged anime about the series. Being the highest grossing media franchise of all time is not surprising in my eyes. Let's just not mention the scalping problem. That's so stupid in my opinion. Rayman is a platformer style game created by Mitchell Hansel for Ubisoft. Since the release of the first game in 1995, Rayman has had a bunch of sequels and spin-offs, even one that got announced not too long ago. The games I'm mostly referring to for this entry are Rayman Origins, which came out for the PlayStation, Wii, Xbox 3DS, and PC, and Rayman Legends, which came out in 2011 for the same consoles, even releasing as far as 2017 on the Nintendo Switch. These games were a typical platformer style game for kids, various worlds with a ton of collectibles and secrets to find. What distinguishes these games from Mario though is the fact that you could customize your character. These characters will all play the same way with minor changes for some. Another cool aspect about this game is that the levels range in difficulty. This difficulty was announced to the player in forms of skulls on the bottom of the paintings before entering a level. I vaguely remember playing this game as a kid. I think I probably watched gameplay of it more than I played though. I still have a lot of friends who told me they spent a lot of time playing these games as a kid. And there you have it, the first 2 layers of my iceberg of Gen Z video games. If you enjoyed the style of how I presented every game, feel free to tell me in the comments below. Additionally, if you have any games you'd recommend, tell me in the comments below and I'll definitely check them out. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I know it was a long one, and the games weren't as interesting as of now, but don't worry, they'll get interesting in the next 2 parts. I was your host Frostbite, and as always, take care of yourself and have a nice rest of your day.